Second Verse is sponsored by Attitude Creativity. Many indie music artists don't have a website that grows their audience and reflects who they are, so they get lost in the noise of streaming. Marketing and brand messaging with Attitude Creativity helps boost your brand and build a site that hits all the right notes. You want to be an artist who stands out from the crowd, and to do that, you need your music to be heard. If your website doesn't reflect who you are or make an impact, you feel like a singer who's been handed a pair of drumsticks instead of a mic. You deserve a website and brand messaging you can be proud of, and that doesn't take time away from your music. As an artist like you, I understand how overwhelming websites and marketing can be. And that's why, putting on my other creative hat, I put my decades of marketing and development experience to work for you. You'll no longer have to apologize for your website. You'll look and feel like a professional with a custom story branded website you can be proud of. And right now, you can get a head start with my free downloadable EPK blueprint and start building your electronic press kit to promote your music. Head to attitudecreativity.com/blueprint to get your copy. That's Attitude, ATTITUDE, creativity.com/blueprint. Welcome back to Second Verse. Here we celebrate indie artists finding their musical selves later in life. And so if you enjoy hearing these wonderful stories and getting this inspiration from this podcast, please make sure you do like and subscribe and share it with your friends so that more people can hear it. Today I'm going to talk about clarifying your message as an artist. I want you to stay to the end for 3 practical steps to craft your clear message. Have you ever tried to describe your music and you're just at a loss for words? Or maybe you've realized that you're describing it all wrong. I used to think, well, my music has a lot of acoustic guitar, so maybe it's folk, but there's no steel guitar, so it's not quite country. What about Americana? And it never really seemed to land. And finally, it became clear to me that I actually was making acoustic pop rock, which made so much sense because I listened to so much pop rock growing up. And then I like to add these cinematic elements, which also made a lot of sense because I spent a lot of years in school in symphonic band. So it all started to come together, but for a long time, I had no idea how to describe what it was that I made. And the conversation sometimes would just be so challenging and confusing. But if you can't describe what you do clearly, it's hard for people to discover it. What genre do you even put on your song when you upload it to your distributor? Even the people who would love your music are going to have a hard time finding it if you can't describe it. So why does clarity matter? Well, obviously, you need people to find what you're making. You need them to hear it in order to build an audience. But very simply, if you confuse, you lose. That's a story brand principle. If you confuse, you lose. So think about a lot of the young artists who sound like so many other artists that they're modeling themselves after so that they can build this career. Problem is, if they don't have something distinctive about them and they just sound like everybody else, a lot of potential audience members might say, yeah, I kind of like that song, but isn't that by so-and-so? Or who made that music? I don't even know. They get lost because they're confused. They don't know who this person is. And until that artist can differentiate themselves, it's never going to get better. So in music, clarity equals connection. And it's not just about branding in terms of marketing. That obviously is important if you want to grow, again, an audience and a music business. But it really is your identity. Being clear about who you are is what tells the world this is what you can expect. And it also shows them what you stand for, how your music will make them feel. So if we think back to last week when I talked about imposter syndrome, there's that inner critic that you're fighting against. But one of the best antidotes to imposter syndrome is knowing your story so clearly that you stop chasing validation or competing with others, and you start communicating your actual purpose. So a lot of artists will make these mistakes. First, overcomplicating. Obviously, when I tried to describe my music early on and I was coming up with all these different adjectives, I was just making it harder on myself instead of simply accepting the styles that I loved that have found their way into my music and still do to this day. But you can also overcomplicate things by trying to just sound different instead of being understandable and being unique for who you really are instead of trying to just break out of sounding like everybody else. The other thing that can happen is just underselling what it is that you do and saying that maybe genre doesn't matter. It's easy to feel that way today because there are so many artists who combine and mash up genres. It's very, very common, so much more common than earlier on in the music industry. And I actually think that's really a great thing. But there are still unique things about your music. So you can't just say, I just write whatever I feel and I just make it sound the way that I want it to sound and then expect that there will be an audience that follows. I mean, if you just want to make music that you love and it doesn't sound like anything else and it is just what you feel, that's great. That's art. But it may not be commercial and you have to understand and accept that if you're hoping to make money from your music. The next problem is just copying. And that kind of goes back to what we've been talking about when other artists sound so much like the existing artists, or they borrow so much from someone else's vibe because it works. But is it true to them? And if it's not authentic to that artist, if it's not authentic to you, if you find yourself doing this, the potential audience will smell that and they'll go elsewhere. They'll find the authenticity. So if your bio sounds like something an algorithm wrote because you're just trying to get the numbers or you're trying to ride the coattails of other artists, it's probably time to start over and actually get clarity for yourself so that you can clarify your message to your audience. So what are the elements of an artist's message? We're going to talk about 3 of them. The first one is the heart, why you create. How many times have you listened to a podcast and they talk about your why? So don't roll your eyes at me yet, because your why does fuel every decision. It does fuel the genres that you work in, your visual representation of yourself, and other artists that you might collaborate with. But here's where it gets a little bit different for an artist. This is not just about why you make music for you. This is the internal problem that you help your listeners solve. And you might be thinking, my listeners have problems? Yes, they have a problem emotionally that they want to solve with music. And that could just simply be that they want something that's going to lift their spirits and they're ready to find a song that is energetic and happy and joyous. Or they may have some other feeling, emotion, heartbreak, experience, and music is going to come alongside and mark that moment, speak into what's going on, help them to feel heard and seen. So the reason that you're making music isn't just for you. And so your why is what connects to the person that you want to listen to your music. So for me, with this podcast, a different type of art, my why is helping people feel seen in their second acts and rediscovering their creativity at any age. In my music, my why is helping people to embrace the things that they've gone through, to own their own identity and feel empowered. So if someone truly got what your music is about emotionally, how would you want them to feel? That's the heart. That's why you create for them. So the second element is your hook, how you describe your why, essentially. Or we might call this a one-liner in StoryBrand terms. The goal of this is to come up with 1 or 2 sentences that anybody can repeat back. And if you're asked on the street, what is it you do? What kind of music do you make? you'll be able to just say it right back to them, and they'll know immediately whether or not this is something that they connect with. So you can use this mini framework. Say to yourself, I create this type of music. You will fill that in, this type of music, for this type of listener who has this type of goal or desire. So for example, I create cinematic acoustic pop music for dreamers rediscovering their voice, or something like that. So have you got that? Say to yourself again, I create this type of music, and I create it for this type of listener who has this type of goal or desire. So if you say that out loud, does it make you smile? Does it make you feel like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense? You're on the right track. So I want you to write that down. And that's going to be your one-liner, your headline, your quick and accessible way to explain to people the kind of music that you make, and also that becomes a guide stone for you for all of the other things that you'll need to create, all the assets around marketing your music business. This will be the touchstone. You can go back to this at any time and say, does this align with this message? So then let's look at element 3, which let's call it the harmony. This is how you show your why. Consistency, of course, builds trust. And so you want to make sure that all of your messaging, all of your clarity finds its way into your visual style, the tone of what your website might look like, or your social media platforms. Then there's even your song themes and your social captions. Every little bit should harken back to what we've just created, that one-liner. Your message doesn't stop just with the words, though. It goes far beyond that. And sometimes we do forget how much is communicated outside of the text on the page or on the screen. So it should show up in the colors that you use. And it's not just necessarily colors that you may like, but what colors align with the feeling that you want people to have when they listen to your music. What colors are consistent with the messaging that you're creating. And your photos and poses. What clothing are you wearing? What color schemes are showing up in the pictures? What formats and orientations? And then even how you talk between songs when you're on stage, if you're a live performer. There should be this consistency across all of these communications, because then that demonstrates that you know who you are as an artist and you know who your audience is looking for. So take a minute to pick 3 guiding words. We'll call them your brand melody. Consistent across every way that you present yourself, your music, your visual aesthetic, and how you interact with your fans. Keep those guiding words in front of you all the time. And along with this one-liner, they will help guide how you communicate. So for example, things like authentic, reflective, or cinematic, which of course is more of a description of the type of music. But you can see that any of these 3 words could relate both to you as a person and to the art that you put out. This is where your visual and your verbal identity meet up with your audience's story. So an exercise like this can help you to get clarity around this kind of messaging that will be the foundation of any marketing that you might do, but also in just understanding who am I as an artist and how do I interact with the community that I want to build around myself. But you already do have a message. It's woven through every lyric you write, and you just need to bring that out to the surface. In fact, I didn't realize until I was several songs in to my most recent singles that there was a through line. There was a cohesive message that I could pull out of all of those songs that was clearly baked into all of those songs. And it's because it was so deeply authentic to who I am as an artist. And even before I understood how to communicate that, it was starting to rise up and become obvious. And then it became something I could write to, something I could share and convey and also build into the broader message of who I am as an artist as I shared my story and connected with my listeners' stories. And so your story, your themes, your topics, they matter. And when you tell it clearly, the people who need to hear it, they can finally find you. They don't have to guess. They don't have to stumble upon you in a sea of hundreds of thousands of songs that are new daily. They can find you. And so in a moment, I'm going to share 3 practical next steps that will help you to get that message clarified. But first, I want to remind you to like, subscribe, review, and share this podcast with your friends, because that's how other people get to hear it and the message gets to go further. And they can learn how to clarify their own stories. I also would love to hear your artist message shared with me at secondversepod.com/share your story. I know you have amazing stories out there, and I would love to feature some of them on future episodes. Here are 3 practical steps for getting clarity in your message as a music artist. Write your one-liner or your hook where you explain, I create this type of music for this type of listener who has this type of goal or desire. Then you test it. Ask your friends, does this sound like me? How many times have you had to fill out some kind of questionnaire and describe yourself, but you just don't always have the total perspective? Ask that friend, does this resonate? And if it doesn't, I'm sure that they're going to tell you and actually help you to get clarity yourself. And once you've got all of that solid, go apply it. Use the same phrasing across your bio, your social profiles, your website heading, and even build it out into some of the content. Let it inform how you fill out your captions and describe your music, and even how you write your songs. And once you've got your bios all updated, go ahead and tag me. Tell me how it went for you, and I'd love to see what you're doing. Next time, I'll go even a little bit deeper into this and talk about how to build a creative ecosystem. So make sure you come on back, and as always, keep chasing your second verse. Your best work may be ahead of you. And now to close us out, here's my song, Running on Empty.
If only the side of the road showed me just which way to go. I'm glad I heard your voice in my head. I believe in you, that's what you said. My tank was on E, warning lights blinding me. I was running on empty. Running on empty, gave it all I got, then you filled me up till I stopped. Running on empty. Remember we cried when I opened my eyes, untied the mask of my disguise. You see what I try to conceal, what we have is real. My tank was on E, warning lights blinding me. I was running on empty, burned up my last straw, then you filled me running on empty. Can't